Concordian, before I begin, I want to welcome the news of the ruling in the High Court in Belfast this morning that the British Government's Legacy Act is in breach of the European Convention on Human Rights, and I think it would be opportune to get an update on the interstate case early next week. Concordian, 2017 in Yevile Sishartia, Oireachtas, agus an Tara Simon Harris, Galtnas na Mewain Januig Fanart, Robert Scoliosis, or Finis Mona Keravi. Ag brisú in Galtnas and on the Puestishan, the Rini Miguel Cantarhain, Casla Kylian Stewart, agus Gulor Diniela, agus in Latin New Hunted, the Gulor your Puesti, Eg Fanart, Niwain Keravi, ag a Kojaku Bianta or Fohonia and Opera Shaw. Minister, last week children and families came to the Dáil. Like Kylie Ann Stewart and her parents, they travelled from across the state to have their voices heard. Now, Kylie Ann from Kilmacrenan in Donegal in my own county, she's 10 years old. She's a beautiful, young and brave girl. I had the opportunity to speak to her outside the gates here of Leinster House. But she, Minister, has been failed. Failed by your government, failed by the state, failed by the commitment that you gave her and the family 7 years ago. Kylie Ann has been waiting 5 years for critical scoliosis surgery. She and her parents were first told that she needed scoliosis surgery when she was 4 years old, yet she continues to wait. Her condition is acute, her pain is great, her parents, they're heartbroken. Right now, Kylie Ann's back is curved at 138 degrees. Her parents have been told that if her spine curves by a further 10 degrees, they will be unable to operate on her. Kylie Ann has had to be especially careful with the skin that covers the bones that protrude from her back. The risk is that the skin could break down, increasing the chance of infection. Now, I say all of this, Minister, because when we discuss numbers later on and all of this, this is the reality. This is the reality that Kylie Ann and her parents have to manage every single day, and many other Kylie Anns out there. We can't contemplate in this House what it must be like to endure that as a child, as a 10-year-old, to endure that as a parent as you watch on and know month passes, year passes, and still no sign of an operation. Knowing that there's a clock that's ticking, knowing that if the curvature gets worse, that the operation will not happen at all. And this is the life, Minister, for 288 children who languish on waiting lists for critical scoliosis surgery across our state. Last week, I had the opportunity to chat to many of them. They came here to the Dáil to make their voices heard and to say enough is enough. 7 years ago, Minister, you yourself gave a commitment as Minister for Health. You said that no child by the end of 2017 would be waiting longer than 4 months for scoliosis-related surgery. A promise you made, a promise you broke, made to Kylie Ann and so many other children that was broke year after year. There are currently over 70 children waiting for more than 4 months for this surgery, with many, such as Kylie Ann, who are waiting for years. Kylie Ann's waiting over half her life for this operation. 2 years ago, your successor, Minister Stephen Donnelly, made the same commitment. He announced €19 million funding for scoliosis-related surgery. Last week, he told the Dáil that he doesn't know if all of this money was even spent for this purpose. And at the same time, the government is asking parents and advocates to trust the system. After all of the years of broken promise, how could these children and the parents have any faith in the system, I ask you? There are things that can be done for the 288 children who are waiting for scoliosis-related surgery. Those who were well enough to travel could have accessed treatment abroad with a specific tailor programme. That was ended before the pandemic in 2019, and waiting lists started to rise again. And it beggars belief that the treatment abroad scheme was stopped while children are waiting more than 4 months for their operations. For those who cannot travel, we need to build domestic capacity. The government needs to identify a surgeon who can perform this work, even if it means an international search or bespoke arrangement. And the government must establish a truly independent task force that gets to grips with this scandal. So can I ask you, what's your plan for Kylie Ann? Has the Government or Children's Health Ireland sourced a surgeon at home or abroad who can do this work? And will the Government establish an independent task force with the remit that was set out last week to engage with and act on the concerns of parents advocates to improve the health service for all of these children? And please also, in your response, Minister, can you tell us why any of the children or family should trust anything you say, given that you made that promise 7 years ago and you broke it?
Minister, please.
Thanks very much, Deputy Doherty. I want to join with you firstly in acknowledging the ruling from the High Court in Belfast earlier today by Mr Justice Colton. It's a long ruling. I think it's a judgment of around 200 pages, but it does certainly seem positive, and positive from the perspective of the Irish Government wanting to work to ensure that all families get justice, because all families, of course, deserve justice. And officials from the Department of Foreign Affairs are in close contact with organisations assisting the plaintiffs. In this case, there are many families in Northern Ireland who stand to be impacted by the Legacy Act, who I know will be studying today's judgment carefully, and there will be an opportunity, no doubt, to be updated on that in due course. Thank you very much for raising an extraordinarily important issue, an issue that I know everybody in this House and everybody in this country who wants to see resolved. You referenced Kylie-Anne, and you're right, nobody in this House can imagine the pain that she and her family are going through. When I was Minister for Health, I met with many families with children awaiting scoliosis procedures. I remember them. I remember their names. I remember their faces. I know somewhat what they were going through, though none of us can fully imagine it. And as a result of that, I did decide to place an unrelenting focus in 2017 on reducing the scoliosis times. And you are correct. The HSE did say to me, and did indeed put in their strategic corporate plan, that they wanted to get to a point where no child would wait longer than 4 months, and that scoliosis surgeries would be brought in line with the National Health Service in the UK. I can tell you, hand on heart, that as a result of that commitment, we saw very, very significant progress in terms of achieving that target. And you don't have to take my word for it at all, Deputy, because I'm sure you wouldn't, but you can take the word, I'm sure, of the Ombudsman for Children, because in a report published by the Ombudsman for Children, it did show that by the end of 2017, we had the number of children waiting for longer than 4 months down to 29. It also says in that report from the Ombudsman that he met with many people, including myself, and he says very clearly that in meetings with myself, the Department of Health, the Children's Hospital Group, consultants, hospital staff, management, he noted there's an absolute commitment from all involved to address this matter in the best interest of children. So people worked tirelessly, and we saw wait times very, very significantly reduce. We opened an additional theatre in Crumlin. We hired additional theatre nurses. Many more surgeries were carried out in those years than had been before, and many children got access to life-transforming surgeries. All of that is true. It's also true, and you referenced a pandemic, and again, you don't need to take my word for that. If you read newspaper articles from the 8th of September 2020 in the Irish Examiner as an example, the closure of theatres, the reduction of certain health services during the pandemic did have a real impact in progress being reversed. And as a result of that, we have seen the health service working night and day to try and build on that progress, and my successor, Minister Donnelly, being extraordinarily committed now to trying to get back to where we need to get to and get this thing back on track, because they're not numbers, you're right. They're real children that no one wants to see suffering. So it is important for parents to know this. There are extra theatres opened. There are additional theatre staff. There has been €19 million allocated. And that 19 million has done real things, real tangible things. It's resulted in an additional 193 staff working in the health service. Doctors, nurses, radiographers working on spinal surgeries in Kappa, in Crumlin, in Temple Street. And as the Minister for Health told this House last week, there's another wave of capacity now due to come on stream. Another theatre due to open in Temple Street, another MRI due to open in Crumlin, and 24 additional beds, because I know from memory, again, the beds are such a core component of the delivery of these surgeries. I believe 20 of them are already open. You raised two specific questions, one in relation to the issue of a task force. And I think that is a sensible suggestion, as does the government. There will be a task force established. The task force will include all stakeholders, including patient representatives and, crucially, clinicians. That's important too. The Minister for Health did meet with a number of advocacy groups last week to discuss the terms of reference for that task force. And patient advocates were very clear about what they want the task force to do. And in collaboration with the advocacy groups, work is now progressing on addressing these terms of reference. The task force will have an independent chair, and contrary to some of the misinformation out there, it will not report to Children's Health Ireland.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Doherty.
Minister, I asked you, what is your plan for these children? What is your plan for Kylie-Anne? And I use Kylie-Anne as an example, but we could name many other children. 5 years she's waiting. 5 years. Curvature of her spine 138 degrees. If it goes 10 more degrees, it's inoperable. 5 years. Throughout this period you've been in government, whether it's Minister for Health or whether it's your successor, Stephen Donnelly made a commitment, just like you did. You gave your commitment 7 years ago on the basis of a plan. Stephen Donnelly gave his commitment over 2 years ago. Nobody would be waiting more than 4 months by the end of that year. It still hasn't happened. Kylie Ann and many others like her not just wait 4 months, not even 4 years, some of them are waiting more than that. And I'm asking you again, what is the plan for these individuals? You talk about money that's been invested. The Minister himself stood where you stand and saying he's carrying out an audit because he doesn't even know if all the money that he allocated went to scoliosis treatment. That's 2 years after that he announced it, on the day that we bring forward a PNB, because there is not the attention on this issue that needs to be. And the reason I put it into the life experience of the child is we have to be children-centred here. So I'm asking you, what is your government going to do? For the last 7 years you've been in government, since you've been Minister for Health and made this commitment, and you're drastically failing these children. And it's not good enough. It is simply not good enough, Minister.
What we're going to do for Kylie Ann, what we're going to do for children right across this country, what we're going to do for parents, what we're going to do to families is get this back on track. We saw the progress that could be made in 2017. We saw the fall in wait times. We saw the extra children getting their services. We saw the Ombudsman's for Children's report welcoming some of that. We now have the extra 19 million. There are additional staff going in. We're very clear on that, 193 more staff. There's a new theatre due to open. There's new diagnostic equipment due to come on stream in Crumlin in relation to an MRI. So let's not suggest that any of us have greater concern than anyone else, because I could equally ask you what you're going to do. Because whilst you've rightly been raising this over the last while, well, hang on a second. While you've rightly, we're not planning on doing that at all, to be honest. But while you rightly. Deputy Doherty, with respect also, as Deputy Kearns reminded this House yesterday, show me your budget and I'll tell you what your priorities are. This is your alternative budget. Please direct me to the page where it references scoliosis, spinal surgeries or any additional funding. This government is absolutely determined to deliver for these children. This government is working night and day. There is a task force in place. There's engagement with the advocacy groups. David Moore, a consultant surgeon, has now been appointed to head up a paediatric spinal surgery management unit. There is no lack of compassion and there will be more delivery.